Шановні народні депутати, сьогодні у залі засідань я запрошую парламентську делегацію Португальської Республіки, яку очолює голова Асамблеї Республіки пан Аугусто Ернесто Сантус Сільва. Давайте оплесками привітаємо наших португальських друзів. Шановні колеги, вельмишановний пане голово Асамблеї, перед тим, як запросити вас до слова, дозвольте від імені Верховної Ради України висловити слова щирої вдячності португальському народу, Асамблеї Республіки і вам особисто за підтримку та солідарність з українським народом у надскладний для нас час. Португалія рішуче засудила збройну агресію проти України та воєнні злочини, скоєні Російською Федерацією на території нашої держави. Надана вашою державою військова допомога не просто наближає нашу перемогу над окупантом, а допомагає зберегти найдорожче, що у нас є – життя наших воїнів і цивільних громадян. Розраховуємо на продовження такої важливої військової підтримки. Дружня Португалія активно долучається до наших ініціатив щодо притягнення держави-агресора до відповідальності за скоєні злочини. Вітаємо приєднання Португальської Республіки до робочої групи із створення спеціального міжнародного трибуналу щодо злочинів агресії Російської Федерації проти України. Сподіваємось також, що португальський парламент визнає Росію державою-терористом. Португалія бере активну участь у парламентському вимірі міжнародної Кримської платформи і підтримує вступ України до ЄС та НАТО. Ми високо цінуємо надання вашою державою тимчасово переміщеним громадянам України, а це майже 60 тисяч осіб, які вимушені були залишити свої домівки внаслідок війни. Дякуємо Португалії за плідну роботу і за надану гуманітарну допомогу, а також за активну участь у відбудові зруйнованих закладів освіти в Україні. Підтримка Португалії відчутна. Ми пишаємось, що маємо таких друзів. Пане голово, ваш приїзд до Києва припав на Всесвітній тиждень португальської мови та культури, центральним днем якого визначено 5 травня. Любов до власної мови, культури та історії ще більше зближує наші народи і країни, бо є нашою спільною і невід'ємною рисою. Тому хочу сказати вам і вашим колегам португальською. Falizes de cumprimentar os senhores em Kiev, invisível, queridos amigos. Agradeço o vosso apoio. Juntos venceremos. Шановні народні депутати, до слова запрошується голова Асамблеї Португальської Республіки пан Аугусто Ернесту Сантус Сілва. Прошу привітати.
Mr. President of the Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine, esteemed Ruslan Stefanchuk, dear friends, ladies and gentlemen, MPs of Ukraine, I thank you for the invitation to visit Ukraine. On my own behalf and the members of the Parliament that are here today representing several Portuguese political parties, please stand. And Socialist Party, Social Democrat Party, the Liberals and the Left Party. I am grateful for the opportunity to meet with President of the Republic of Ukraine, our hero, Volodymyr Zelensky. and the Prime Minister of Ukraine, Denis Shmyhal. I'm grateful for the honor of speaking today at the plenary session of the Verkhovna Rada. Our presence here as President and members of the Portuguese Parliament has a central purpose: to express the profound solidarity of the Portuguese people with the Ukrainian people, reaffirming Portugal's full support for the Ukrainian fight for its non-renounceable, non-negotiable right to its independence and territorial integrity. Our position was made absolutely clear in the early hours of February 24, 2022, when the President of the Portuguese Republic, the Parliament and the government expressed with one voice that Portugal condemned the aggression by the Russian Federation, reaffirms the principles of the United Nations Charter, firmly rejects any intention to alter the borders of Europe by force, supports unconditionally the exercise of the right to the legitimate defense of Ukraine, welcomes Ukrainian refugees, defends sanctions against those responsible for the invasion, and demands an immediate end of hostilities and the withdrawal of Russian forces from the occupied territories, from all occupied territories of Ukraine. Since the very beginning of the aggression, the Portuguese Parliament has expressed its solidarity with the Ukrainian people and authorities multiple times. I recall the formal session held in the Portuguese Parliament on April 2022 with President Zelensky, as well as the video conference I had on May 22 with Your Excellency, Mr. President of the Verkhovna Rada. This year, on February 24, we held a plenary debate on the war against Ukraine, reiterating our solidarity with the Ukrainian people and our condemnation of the Russian aggression. Also, the relevant committees of the Portuguese Parliament and the Portugal-Ukraine Parliamentary Friendship Group have carried out several activities in coordination with the Ukrainian Embassy in Lisbon and with organizations representing the Ukrainian community living in Portugal. Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen, war is horror. When one party provokes it by attacking other party, the latter has not only the right but also the duty to defend itself militarily. The time is therefore to support Ukraine by providing the necessary weapons and equipment for its defense. And when the aggressor, like Russia is doing, deliberately targets civilians, bombs cities, residential neighborhoods, schools and hospitals, committing war crimes, the international community must act in order to bring those responsible to justice. The war in Ukraine concerns all of Europe. We cannot allow the logic of imperialistic expansion to bring once again Europe to the brink of abyss. European and Atlantic unity is hence essential to defend international law, to defend peace, to defend our citizens, to ensure a rules-based international order that promotes reason instead of force. We want peace in Ukraine. Peace can only be achieved by securing the end of Russian military aggression and the unconditional withdrawal of the occupying forces from all of the Ukrainian territory. Mr. President, dear friends, as parliamentarians, we must also pay close attention to the political rhetoric used by the Kremlin. Its illegitimate narratives are dangerous and must be countered. The idea that Russia has any historical right to what was once the territory dominated by the former Russian Empire, that idea is false and we cannot accept it. The idea that the end of the Soviet Union was, I'm quoting Putin, a geopolitical catastrophe is false and we cannot accept it. On the contrary, the fall of the Soviet Union allowed freedom from oppression and a peaceful transition to democracy for several nations and millions of people. The idea that the enlargement of NATO, a defensive alliance, poses any threat to Moscow is false and we cannot accept it. The idea that Ukraine's European track introduces any imbalance in Eastern Europe is false and we cannot accept it. On the contrary, it represents the Ukrainians' European track represents the realization of the European aspirations and will of the Ukrainian people, their commitment to the European values of peace, democracy, rule of law, social cohesion, and the fight against corruption. The theory of the so-called spheres of influence, which states that the strongest countries have the power to influence their neighbors, is false and unacceptable in this 21st century. The assumptions of ultra-nationalistic doctrines of zero-sum games between adversary nations are false and cannot be accepted. We need a world of cooperating nations based on international law and human rights. And finally, Putin's assumption that he is invested with a supposed mission to preserve a religious tradition and combat an alleged moral degradation of the West is false and we cannot accept it. On the contrary, free and plural societies, cosmopolitan cultures, and liberal democracies best protect individuals and their beliefs and traditions. Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen, Portugal and Ukraine are two close countries, both European and Western countries, with an ever-growing relation between its peoples built on the important Ukrainian community living in Portugal and speaking both Ukrainian and Portuguese. The ties between our countries will become even stronger now with Ukraine's accession process to the European Union. Portugal supports this process and considers that the European Union must carry out the reforms in order to respond to these new enlargement dynamics. These ties between Portugal and Ukraine will also grow stronger as cooperation between Ukraine and NATO, an alliance of which Portugal is a founding member, intensifies. Finally, I believe Portuguese diplomacy can bring real added value in the international support for our common struggle. The coalition of countries that politically and diplomatically support Ukraine, condemning Russia's aggression without any reservation, is fortunately very broad. But we still need to enlarge this coalition, promoting dialogue with countries of the Global South, namely from Africa and Latin America. These countries from Africa and Latin America are also victims of the economic and social consequences of this war, but sometimes they may perceive it wrongly as a distant European issue. And Portuguese diplomacy, we have close ties with countries from Africa and Latin America, can help you in convincing them, in mobilizing them in this common fight for freedom and sovereignty and independence of states. This is what Portugal has done. And this is what Portugal will continue to do, to make it clear that Ukraine's borders are today the borders of freedom, security, and peace of the entire world. Portugalia, Pidetremuia, Ucrainu. Міцна дружба між Португалією і Україною. Слава Україні! Дякую.